Hello, I'm Jake Boudrot, Civic Journalist at Tello Community Television. This week, on The Record, I attended the regular monthly meeting of Richmond Municipal Council on June 24th in Arichat. After the meeting, Warden Lois Landry fielded questions from the media, and I spoke with two graduating officer cadets from the Canadian Coast Guard College in Westmount in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. Near the start of the meeting, Richmond Municipal Council approved a recommendation from an in-camera session to make changes to collection services.
I will make a motion that Richmond Municipal Council authorize staff to finalize agreements for collection services and post-collection services with circular materials based on the opt-in service model under extended producer responsibility regulations, and further move that the council authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to execute the contracts with circular materials once finalized.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
The motions from the in-camera session, you mentioned something about changes to collection services. What's that about?
So there are changes coming through government regulations about how circular materials are collected. And so there are two ways to do it. One is wildly more inefficient than the other. One would be for two sets of trucks to go by your house, and in some instances, one truck pick up one and another pick up another. So that really not much complicated about what option we should choose. But whenever there's those kinds of things that come from the province, we need to give the authority to our CAO to sign those contracts.
So when can residents expect these kinds of services to begin, and where exactly will they be happening?
So residents should expect a lot of nothing, because it will involve doing what we have always done, so that your recyclables and your garbage will be picked up at the same time on the same day by the same truck. So if we opted to do things differently, you might say Wednesday is blue bag and Tuesday is white bag, clear bags and whatever, that's not happening. And I think safe to say that that's likely going to be the case across the province. But I will speak to a little bit of a different matter. Same idea, though, is that residents should expect to see considerable changes to curbside collection, which we are very pleased about. In Zone 1 and Zone 2, it will start December 1st, but it will be later in Zone 3. So Zone 1 is Almadam. Zone 3 is on the other side of the canal, so going towards District 5, and Zone 2 is everything in the middle. So we currently have contracts with contractors to do our curbside collection, so that's solid waste plus recyclables, but we're going to be doing that in-house, starting with Zone 1 and 2 when those contracts expire, and we will be doing the same in District 3, but not until that contract expires, which is in 2026 at some point. So we believe that that is going to be a significant change for the better for residents. So it will be our staff that use our vehicles. It also changes the potential for additional heavy-duty garbage pickup. So would we need to do more? We won't if we don't need to, but it will not involve tendering out something. It would just be asking our guys in our trucks to do a little more. So the information that you heard about tonight really changes nothing for residents, but that change to in-house curbside collection is a significant change for the better for residents. And although in this budget we had to pony up a little bit of extra money to pay for the vehicles, but we can amortize those over several years, we actually are looking at reduced costs moving forward. So we're very pleased with that change.
Was it a difficult balance to make that choice to make the extra payment to have this done this particular way and yet still keep tax rates stable as they've been for the past few years?
It was certainly something that we had to look at and say, look, we want, and it was difficult in that you say, oh, well, here's an additional expense. But when you look at the potential savings year after year after year, the savings largely, tremendously outweigh that initial expense. So, there were some difficult decisions in other parts of the budget, but that one was not particularly difficult.
You have a ballpark figure on what that additional expense is?
No, I don't. It really involves the tendering out and the selection of vehicles that are required. So I don't really know.
Council approved a recommendation from its Committee of the Whole session asking that the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities support adequate and sustainable funding for public libraries.
The committee discussed the advocacy for public library funding. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and that the issue of adequate and sustainable funding for public libraries in Nova Scotia be brought forth to the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Board for consideration as an advocacy priority.
Okay, can I have a seconder on that?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Membercat. Any discussion on that? I will just say I think it's in this package that we've received a letter from a neighboring or another municipality to this very point. So hearing no other discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Letter from Eleanor Ralston from East Hants regarding library funding, which we spoke to earlier. Council has adopted a motion that we write a similar letter.
When it comes to the provincial funding formula for public libraries, you mentioned that you were in discussions with a neighboring municipality. Which municipality was that, and what were the nature of those discussions?
East or West Hants? I think it's East, and so not so much discussions as much as the citizen rep, Claire Rankin, who I believe is the chair also for the Eastern Counties Regional Library Committee here, asked that we take a look at sort of a position statement that the libraries have produced that speaks to the important work that they do, but the challenges around compensating staff fairly and in a way that marries up to the important work that they do. So council agreed tonight, it came up at our Committee of the Whole meeting, but council was fully supportive of sending a letter to the province to say, look, this is important work they do, and really asking them to reflect on the way they fund that. And the letter we got from East Hants was really, they beat us to it. They sort of, I think they copied it to all of their, I think they called it their municipal colleagues. So I think really what you're seeing is a kind of a collaboration of people who recognize the value of what libraries do.
So this is the same idea as a recent presentation to the town of Port Hawkesbury. Laura Emery, the head librarian for Eastern Counties Regional Library, they're not looking for money for municipalities, but they're looking for the municipalities to lobby the province to change the funding formula.
That's right, because, so much of what happens in libraries happens to the residents whose councillors and municipal staff see the impact of that. So, when they talk about housing, they talk about the federal government has the money, the province has the programs, and the municipality has the problems. That's often the way you hear it described. But what the work that libraries do really impacts our residents on such a molecular level that it really is, the counselors who hear those stories and the impact of all of that. So that's exactly right, that they are asking not for municipalities for additional funds, but they are asking for support in their request for kind of some thoughtfulness from the province.
A recommendation from the Bylaw/Policy Committee to make changes to the Capital Improvement and Development Policy was approved by Council.
Next up is the Bylaw and Policy Committee report for June of 2025. I'll again turn it over to Deputy Warden Sampson.
The committee met on June 10th, 2025. The committee discussed the Capital Improvement and Development Policy. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Bylaw Policy Committee and proceed with the amendments to the Capital Improvement and Development Policy as presented with the changes as discussed.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Membercat. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Item 12 on your agenda is related to the Capital Improvement and Development Policy. And for those who are following at home, you can find that policy and suggested amendments from pages 35 to 55 in your package. So I am looking for a motion that Council adopt the amended Capital Improvement and Development Policy as presented.
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor Membercat. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sampson. Any discussion on that? just to make folks aware, with minor changes really, but really around timeline, so that where we entertained applications once a year, we allow developers to apply at any time, and we have sort of a rolling vetting process. And that is to make ourselves more nimble, so that should funding from the province or the federal government become available, we would be able to respond in a more timely way. So hearing no other discussion on that, all those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Are the changes to the capital improvement and development policy meant to help developers?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it meant to help developers help us. So what we heard announced, I'll just sort of go back a little bit. So what we heard announced a lot last year was, the federal government saying, look, we know we need to step in and help with housing. And so when the then Prime Minister Trudeau announced his resignation, you could tell there was going to be a lot of nothing, right? There was, governments tend to kind of go into, caretaker mode, and not a lot gets formally done during election campaigns. But we wanted to really kind of keep an eye out for, coming out of an election, what's next? And so immediately after the federal election, there was just a story in the news about how, in fact, during the campaign, or just leading up to the campaign, the federal government and the provincial government had signed an agreement where the feds had given the province a pot of money that would allow them to support infrastructure projects. And by that, I'm talking about pushing water and sewer further. So what developers will tell us is that the math has to math. And putting in septic systems and then being responsible for septic systems and wells in perpetuity is really, really challenging. It is much better to be able to hook up to municipal water and sewer services. So if we want to push water and sewer into farther up a road or just past where it is now, that is a tremendous expense. And the developer can't, there's no way a developer could pay all that. There'd be no math to math. And that point, municipalities can't pay it all. But the feds and the province have gotten together and say, look, we will contribute. So what you would expect in those instances is that developers, municipalities, and the feds and the province would get together to help kind of, reduce that burden to any one group. But what it showed us immediately was, if you look at our policy, which is, look, we are, as a municipality, prepared to help pay our share. But the way the policy read, developer could only apply once a year, and then staff would vet it, and then it would come to council through a tight window. But if the province announced, this month, this part of the calendar, we're calling for proposals, anybody got any ideas, but we only were able to evaluate ideas over in this end of the calendar, then we just didn't want to see any missed opportunities. And I think I can speak for council when I say that this council is wholly committed to doing all the things within our purview to support housing. That is a top priority. Tonight alone, we changed a zoning bylaw to allow for accessory dwellings on Almadam on lots that cannot be subdivided. We asked in our planning advisory, recommended to council, that we ask EDPC to look at all the catalogs CMHC and CBRM are putting out, saying, look at all these houses. You can get these plans for free. Is there any part of Richmond County that it would be a troublesome to build these? Let's change that. So we really are trying to kind of pull all the levers where housing is concerned. And this was a minor change to a policy. It just changed the times that we would accept applications to be vetted. But it's significant for us to be able to move projects forward.
Councillors supported a recommendation from the Planning Advisory/Heritage Committee directing staff to review the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation's Housing Design Catalog or similar sources to identify any barriers in the municipality's land use bylaws for residents or developers trying to build homes.
Planning Advisory Heritage Committee Report, June 2025. The committee met on June 3rd, 2025. The committee discussed the review of zoning across the county relative to the CMHC catalog. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee and direct staff to review the CMHC Housing Design Catalog or similar catalogs as they present themselves, to determine any barriers our current land use bylaws present to residents or developers who may want to build these homes.
There's a motion on the floor. Can we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Marchand. Are there any discussion on the matter? Just an update to council that the CBRM released a similar catalog of units, and we sent that off to EDPC under the direction here which says or similar catalog. So that one will be reviewed as well. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. There is an email from Danny Coffey, Director of Director of Policy and Government Relations from NSFM regarding concerns for the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So good on NSFM for working with our federal counterparts, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, to advocate for that. And at that request, I sent a letter to any developers that we had saying that if they had anything to offer, Danny Coffey at NSFM, that they could reach out directly.
What do you hope to learn by reviewing the CMHC catalog or having staff do that?
So if you take a look at the CMA, if you Google CMHC catalog, and there is a similar one that was just released last week, I think it was, from CBRM. But essentially, these are housing plans. They're accessory units, duplexes, quads, and sixes. So these are housing plans that if you want to build either for yourself or if you're a developer, these allow you to build and you save that expense of having to get the housing plans and so on. In some parts of our municipality, you can't build certain heights, you can't build certain volume of housing. What we're saying is we as a municipality need to get out of the way of developers. We need to get out of the way of individual people contributing to the housing stock. We are absolutely in a housing crisis. I mean, every councillor around this table, and I bet you many of your listeners, could talk about situations they know for people who are unhoused, people who are precariously housed, and people who are living hand to mouth because of the costs of housing. So what we as a municipality need to do, first and foremost, is get out of the way. So if there are things that we can do in our municipal planning strategy and our land use bylaw, then you better believe we're going to do those. And we're going to do those really quickly.
A recommendation of the Planning Advisory / Heritage Committee to continue conversations with housing and property developers and invite them to a forum to discuss housing and property development was approved by Council.
The committee discussed follow-up to initial meetings with developers. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee and continue conversations with housing and property developers and invite them to a forum to discuss barriers and solutions to housing and property development across the spectrum.
Okay, second. So we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Marchand. Any other discussion on that matter? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
And just quickly on the housing front, there was also some discussion that there has been discussion between the municipality and housing developers, and there's looking to be some follow-up on that. What can you tell me about what's coming out of these talks and what happens now?
So the talks we had through the winter were really to sort of get a conversation going, or to try to see themes in what people were saying, people who have developed in this area, or who have an appetite to do that, or are interested in doing that. And there were definitely some themes. First, I will say that people who build in Richmond County, people who develop, people who contribute to the housing stock, are people who are really committed to this community. And I'll give you an example someone gave. You can go to Kent, or you can go to Home Hardware, or you can go to, Rona, and you can fill up your truck with all the materials it would take to build an apartment building. You can build that here in Arichat, or you could build it in Antigonish. The fact is you can charge more rent in Antigonish. The average median income in Richmond County is 15% lower than it is in the rest of Nova Scotia. So developers here understand that there is only a certain amount of rent that people here can afford to pay. So when somebody builds, despite that, you know that they're building because they're committed to this community. I would also say that Richmond punches above its weight in housing. So we are seeing starts, and we have developers who have 15, 20, 30 building units. So for a small community, that's really significant. We also see, because we're a small community, we see a really great relationship between our developers and our builders. In some instances, our developers are our builders. In other instances, it's a really trusted partnership. So we've got a lot going for us, but there are some things that they struggle with. One was CMHC. So right away, we got involved with the NSFM and asked for them to lobby changes to CMHC because it is not rural friendly. Really happy to see the trajectory that's some momentum in that area. We're also looking to make sure that we're capturing all the opportunities that are out there. So we're looking forward to sort of saying to them sometime hopefully this summer, look, remember those conversations? Here are some of the things we've been working on, and what are some other things you want us to know?
A recommendation from the Planning Advisory/Heritage Committee asking that staff find areas in Richmond County that don't permit standalone buildings, such as garages and sheds, and report back to the committee, was approved by councillors.
The committee discussed the review of permitting practices for standalone buildings, garage, utility, shed. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee and direct staff to scan all the areas in Richmond County that don't permit standalone buildings, garage, utility, shed, and report back to the committee.
Okay, we have a motion, Deputy Warden Sampson, seconded by Member Cat. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. That one is about if you own a piece of property, could you put a shed and then put a shed and connect power to it? But what we would argue is if you need to build a shed first so that you can do all the things it takes you to get your building permits and all of that, and that's the shed you're going to use to put your, materials to build a house on that lot, great, fine. I think what we're seeing is a shift in our beliefs. That issue had to do with people saying, we better not do that because then they might put a mobile home, like a travel trailer type thing, and then they're not paying enough taxes. At this point, everything has to be about making sure people get housing. This is absolutely a housing crisis. And so we need to start sort of butting in terms of how we get housing up and roofs over people's heads. So that is, it's peripheral. We're talking about sheds. But if there's anything about that promotes housing, we need to make sure we're getting out of the way.
Council approved a recommendation from the Planning Advisory/Heritage Committee asking that the Eastern District Planning Commission share their feedback on new Nova Scotia Building Code regulations with the committee.
The committee discussed the amendments to the Nova Scotia Building Code regulations. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee and ask EDPC to share the written comments regarding the new building code regulations to the Planning Advisory Heritage Committee, if any.
Okay, motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sampson. Any discussion on that matter? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
Now, the amendments to the Nova Scotia Building Code regulations, would those have a potential impact in Richmond County?
So it actually has as much to do with some of the other things that are happening across the province and across the country. So, for example, we have heard elbows up. We're all about reducing interprovincial trade barriers. There are some parts of Nova Scotia's building code which say, for example, if you're going to have doors in a home, like a something that is prefab, whether it's from a Kent or a whatever, those doors have to be a certain size to promote accessibility. But there are other parts of the country that don't have that. So it could very well be that this interprovincial trade thing, which we're all, all kinds of elbows up, but that might be one example, for example, where now we're going a smidge backwards in terms of accessibility features, if that's not the rule outside of Nova Scotia, but they're allowed to come in. So it's really about the people who know this kind of stuff the best, which is our planning commission, where all of our building inspectors are situated, that if they see anything that is impacted by these building codes and any of those changes, that they have been asked to share those with the province, and we're just asking to kind of get a copy of those. And if we need to advocate, we certainly are happy to.
A recommendation from the Bylaw/Policy Committee to proceed with the adoption of new guidelines for the off-leash dog areas policy, depending on the municipal solicitor's review, was passed by council.
The committee discussed the guidelines for the designation and use of off-leash dog areas policy. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Bylaw Policy Committee and proceed with the adoption of the guidelines for the designation and use of off-leash dog areas policy as presented with the changes as discussed, contingent on the outcome of the review by the solicitor.
Well, I'll second it.
Yes, so we have a motion and a seconder. And so discussion on that topic is that we have since heard from the solicitor, who has some good advice for us, which we'll be talking about a little bit more later on in another, under second reading of bylaw. So to this motion, however, we have a motion and a seconder. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. And our last bylaw changes we're looking to relates to dog control. So this one is quite lengthy. It starts on page 64 and goes to page 80. And this will change fairly significantly the way we deal with dogs in Richmond County. So there was quite a bit of discussion on this matter for months and months at Bylaw and Policy Committee, public hearing earlier this evening. And so I do want to be super clear about change that we're making that we're proposing based on legal opinion. So if you are online and you're following along from page 64 to 80, there is reference just in the definitions really about, what are they called? Right, off-leash parks. And off-leash parks do not exist in Richmond County on municipal land. They do in HRM or CBRM, but our lawyer says that best for us not to put in a bylaw what other people might do on their own property. So to align ourselves better with that, I'm looking for a motion that council approves second reading approval of the dog control bylaw number 70 with the exclusion of section 2.16 and the last sentence, so that's the exclusion of the last sentence in section 2.19, as discussed in the public hearing, with renumbering occurring that results from that.
Okay, I'll move that.
So moved by Councillor Marchand. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lumbercat. So any discussion on that?
Thank you, Warden. Sorry. So just want to reassure the public that Richmond County is not saying no to off-leash dog parks in this change. I think, I've certainly heard from residents that they're interested in this. This is just, we're changing this because legally, we should probably put this in land use bylaw type of thing so that all residents and potential community groups understand how to go about this as opposed to trying to dictate, like you said, what people would be doing on their own property. So it's not a lack of interest in developing off-leash dog areas, but it's just how we do it needs to change.
To add to that EDPC representative was here, the director was here at our meeting, our public hearing earlier about the turbines and the accessory dwellings, but we did speak to him about exploring how that might fit in land use bylaws. So the motion on the floor is to approve second reading of the dog control bylaw with those two amendments.
And the motion that I am making is to amend this with the removal of 2.16 and 2.19, beginning at notwithstanding. That was the motion that I believe. Councillor Lumbercat, yes, that's what I meant.
Okay.
I can add a few more things to remove, but.
No. So happy to revise it and do it in two sections.
Okay.
So Councillor Marchand is making an amendment. Moving the amendment. Councillor
Yes.
Lumbercat, is that satisfactory to you to be part of to second that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment,
Yes.
which is to remove those two sections and renumber.
Correct.
So all those in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. So now then, I am looking for a motion to approve the second reading for the dog control bylaw, number 70, with the approved amendments, which are the exclusion of section 2.16 and the last sentence in 2.19 as discussed in the public hearing with renumbering.
I will make that motion.
That motion is being made by Councillor Mumbercat. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Warden Sampson. So now we are going to vote on the approval of the second reading as such. Is there any debate on that motion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the second reading approval, with the exceptions as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. And we'll record that.
Now, why are the guidelines for the designation and use of off-leash dog areas necessary?
They kind of aren't. So we are looking at making significant changes. I scratched that actually. We have just made significant changes to the way we handle dogs. And, you know, look, I'm a dog lover myself. It's not all that bright, but I love them. And so big fan of dogs, but with dog ownership comes responsibility. And we have lots and lots of complaints from people about dogs running and dogs at large. So we went to great lengths to redo the dog control bylaw. When we looked at other municipalities and their dog bylaws, one of the things in those dog bylaws include reference to off-leash parks. And so we said, okay, great, we'll cover all of our bases. No sense having to keep going back and revising something. But what we realized is that in the municipalities that have an off-leash park feature in their bylaw, it's actually because they own the land that dog leash park is on. So CBRM, HRM, they own land. Parks, their municipal parks, have some parts of land that are off-leash parks. In Richmond County, we don't have any municipal lands, and we are not interested in operating off-leash parks. So had we kept that in the bylaw, we essentially were almost telling other people what they can do with their land, which is really not what a bylaw is for. So we took it out so that it's not included in there, and we did a little bit of a jurisdictional scan, and that is consistent with other more rural populations. We have asked our planning folks to take a look to see if there are some ways, you know, it's important to see those kinds of things regulated so that, you know, people who live around a potential off-leash park sort of understand, and everybody understands the rules. It's just that it wasn't the place for it. It belongs in our planning.
So there's also been a change that right now, if you have a puppy, you need to get the puppy registered. If the dog turns 1 year old, then there has to be another registration, but that's considered a lifetime registration. Why was that put into this particular bylaw?
So really, we're just trying to save, you know, grief for dog owners. So, you know, to register your dog every year, just a little bit more arduous. So our kind of takeaway from the residents' point of view is, why do you have to do that? If you have a dog and you're going to keep him, once is fine. What we did recognize, though, is that when they're puppies, they don't look the same, and you're not allowed to vaccinate a puppy. You have to wait until they're a certain year old. So we've waited until they're 1, and then I think we take a picture of the puppy. And my, you know, baby puppy does not look the same as my 1-year-old dog. So it's just those kinds of things. And so once it's, if you get the dog as a puppy, you would register him as a puppy, and then when he turns 1. But if you get the dog and it's a little older, you just do it the one time.
Any other 1 or 2 things in this new bylaw that you feel will improve not only the dog owning experience for county residents, but also to make it easier for the municipality as a whole?
Yeah, I think if you have complaints about dogs that are on your property when you don't want them to be. Listen, if you and your neighbor have a gentleman's agreement that your dog can go on his property and his dog can go on your property, fill your boots, none of our business. But if you are a dog owner who is fearful of dogs in the community, if they're doing damage on your property, I think that it's safe to say the dog catcher even would say that there wasn't a lot of teeth to the bylaw that we had in place. So the goal here is to really define what a dog who is dangerous, what it means to be running at large. So I think those definitions just mean that everybody understand kind of the rules of the road and what it means when your dog has done something it shouldn't do, and what it means for you to be in care and control of your animal. And so, we certainly understand that there are mitigating features. So, if a dog bites you because you've been beating the dog, good enough for you. So like those kinds of things are all built into this policy. So I think anytime you articulate the rules of the road for everybody, dog owners and people who live around that dog, I think it's better for everybody.
Colton LeBlanc, Minister of Growth and Development, sent correspondence to the municipality about the joint management of the Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park and inclusion in the Atlantic Port Assessment.
The next series of, 15B, on page 106 to 109, letter from Colton LeBlanc, Minister of Growth and Development, regarding joint management of Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park and inclusion in Atlantic Port Assessment. So we have a meeting tomorrow with Invest Nova Scotia folks and deputy in the department. So I believe the port assessment opportunities have sailed, but good to have those conversations starting.
Can I get a quick thought from you, Lois, on the letter that was received from the Minister of Growth and Development, Colton LeBlanc, concerning the joint industrial park, but also concerning the concern about the port assessment being carried out by Net Zero Atlantic? It looks like the Strait of Canso Superport won't be a part of that port's assessment. Your immediate reaction, because I know you lobbied for them to be a part of this.
So the Strait of Canso will have, as I understand it, several groups that will actually have their ports evaluated through this process. So the Superport Corporation, for example, could on their own absolutely have said to Net Zero, yeah, come take a look at us. Melford, all of those. And I would expect that happened, and certainly those groups are, waving their hands saying, listen, we could absolutely be a part of offshore, and we want to find out what our challenges are, and we want to be recognized for what our strengths are. So it isn't to say that the Strait of Canso does not have any representation in that study, but there are parcels of land owned by Invest Nova Scotia, formerly known as Nova Scotia Business something or other, NSBI, now known as Invest Nova Scotia. So there are big parcels of land in the Point Tupper Heavy Industrial Park that belong to Invest, and they declined to submit those for consideration. So that was what prompted that particular letter. But going before that, there had been a motion of council to sort of reach out, which we did, and say, look, we'd like to have some conversations with you about what are the ways that we can be in the loop a little bit, where we can, have an understanding or support your work in saying to industry, private, public, whatever, we're over here and we are very happy to be considered for all the opportunities coming forward. So I'm pleased to report that that we are meeting with Invest Nova Scotia officials tomorrow. And so very preliminary discussions, but very pleased to begin those discussions and looking forward to just conveying sort of our concerns and looking for, positive path forward around kind of similar discussions.
So what's the number one thing you're hoping for to come out of these meetings coming tomorrow?
Some kind of commitment to dialogue that would be ongoing about the opportunities in the Strait region where those pieces of property are concerned. So just want to be a part of those conversations. And if they are if those pieces of land don't feel like they're attractive to government, we're happy to take them off their hands.
Is the timing of this meeting tied into Strait of Canso Superport Days? I know that's obviously a separate conference in and of itself, but, just what do you think of being able to have this conversation literally this week, literally the day before that event in Dundee?
Yeah, I suspect it probably does have something to do with it insofar as it cuts down on people's travel. If you're going to Superport Days, why not have a meeting in that county on the same day? So I hope government is always being mindful of ways that they, can reduce their travel expenses. And so I think that may very well be part of it. But we'll meet with them any day of the week.
With Budget 2025-2026 approved, Council discussed several grant and sponsorship requests.
Committee of the Whole report, June 2025. The committee met on June 10th, 2025. The committee discussed the temporary borrowing resolution for the Loch Lomond Volunteer Fire Department. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and enter into a loan agreement with our lending institution in the amount of $73,564 for the purpose of purchasing a 2021 Ford Super Duty F-350 SRW XLT.
I'll second that.
Okay, that resolution is attached in your package. So anybody have any concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
The committee discussed the Community Climate Capacity Cohort Grant Application 2025-2026. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and approve that staff apply to the program.
Okay, motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mumbercat. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
The committee discussed the deferral of grant applications until after budget approval. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and defer the grant applications from the River Bourgeois Mariner Society, Kitchen Rackets Organization, Celtic Colours Workshops, Janvrin's Island Community Centre, Kitchen Rackets Organization Summer Jam Sessions, and the St. Peter's Grand River Loch Lomond Pastoral Charge until after the 2025-2026 budget is approved.
So you have a seconder on that?
I'll second.
Second by Councillor Mumbercat. Right. Yes. And so, got it. And so just for folks who may find this a strange motion, since this meeting happened, we have in fact passed the budget and we have in fact acted on these, but we are following the procedures. So hearing no other discussion on that, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed? Motion carried.
The committee discussed the sponsorship request from Amber Madden, Sponsorship Chair, Harbour Wars. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and receive the request.
Seconded by Councillor Mumbercat. Any discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to new business, we have 3 Tier 1 Community Grant Fund applications. So the first is for the La Picasse Community Cultural Center. For folks who are following along, that information is on page 80 to 84. So they are looking for, their request is for $1,000 for 6 sessions regarding use steps to improve mental and physical health. So I will happy to entertain a motion, and I would be happy if that motion included $200 from the District 2 funds. To District 2. So I will throw that out to whomever. Councillor Sampson?
Yeah, so thank you for your donation.
From District 2?
From District 2, yes, exactly. I'm listening, don't worry, in case you say District 1 again. But, yeah, so, no, I appreciate that. So 200 from District 2, and I will go 300 from District 1, and hoping to go 500 from the regional fund.
So we have a motion on the floor to that effect. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it for discussion.
Great, okay. So we have a motion for $1,000 to fund this, 200 from District 2, 300 from District 1, 500 from the regional fund for discussion. So I'll open it up.
The full amount of the project, and they did provide a little budget, was 1,000. So we would be funding it at 1,000, we would be funding it 100%. And I know that typically hasn't been our practice. So I'm wondering if we could maybe, and I know we spent a large volume of funds the first night. I'm wondering if we could say like 250 from the regional instead of 500, just to demonstrate that the organization is supplying some of the funds. So I would make a motion to amend the motion to be 200 from District 2, 300 from District 1, and 250 from regional, for a total of $750.
Okay, so that's the amendment on the dollar amounts. Do we have a seconder on the amendment?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Deputy Warden Sampson. We're going to vote on the amendment, which is to change the amount that the regional fund would contribute. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. And so now the vote is if we are open to funding this to the tune of $750, 250 from the regional fund, 300 from District 1, and 200 from District 2. All those in any other discussion on that?
I just want to make one comment. There's a charge for a facilitator in that of 600. I know we had removed some amounts in the Canada Day funds because of people getting paid for that, for the labor. So not that I'm opposed to it, not voting against this. I noticed that was in there for a facilitator under these grant programs.
Yes, and for me, the reality of our Canada Day is that the requests came to more than the budgeted amount. So we were at 15,600 and change. So in order to figure out what's the best way to get us down to 15, that was sort of the decision that was made, as opposed to we are hard and fast against that. So that was how my vote was cast on that matter. So there's a motion on the floor for $750 to the tune of, as we described. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next one is for the Framboise Community Centre, Tier 1 Community Grant Fund. And so if you're following along, that's on page 85 of your package. And so this one is for their annual 10-year Framboise reunion. Annual 10-year.
Annual 10-year threw me off as well.
Maybe we'll ask Councillor Deputy Warden to fill that in, but it's to assist with the cost of food for a breakfast and supper. And we know that Deputy Warden's got lots of money left because he's the only one who didn't spend last time.
I do, and yeah, I do. However, I'd like to make a motion just because there wasn't any requests from District 5 at all to do 500 from the regional and 500 from the district funds, if that's agreeable to anybody.
So we have a motion on the floor for 500 from the district funds, 500 from the regional funds. Do we have any other discussion on that?
And so just like I do want to just mention for folks watching at home how, we didn't fund the 1,000 on the last one, but there was a budget provided on the last one. This one, there is no budget, but we're talking about food and that type of thing, which I'm quite sure is going to get them past the 1,000. So I would feel pretty confident that the $1,000 on this one is not going to be 100% of the whole project. They're obviously going to be putting a lot more into this. So, so that's all I want to say. So I'll be supporting it.
Great, thank you for that. So any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next, and the last item under new business is the Arichat Community Development Association. You'll find information about that starting on page 92 of your package. And that is this is for the request for, to cover any expenses that we cannot cover with donations. That would go toward barbecue, et cetera, for a, what are they calling it? The grand opening, yeah. So, again, I would entertain a motion for movement on this front. I would certainly be happy to have that motion include $500 from District 2 funds. Somebody wants to.
So I'm willing to match that, Warden. So 500 from District 2 and 500 from District 1, fund $1,000.
You better. Yeah. It is a pretty sizable project and really nice for this side of the island. So, any discussion on that? Better not be. Any discussion on that since we're paying?
Yeah, I just want to say they're just looking for the difference of what donations don't pay. So you're giving them the 1,000 anyway.
Was it up to?
It says up to 1,000 and they have to provide receipts.
Yeah.
So we have motion and a seconder, did I? Yes. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, just for reference, Councillor Arichat, we had done one, I remember before, where depending on the funding they got, I think it was a community pasture thing, we had said we'll contribute up to this amount, but it was all based on a percentage of the funding they got from the province, up to a maximum. So really, we didn't know until the province came back, what it would turn out to be. So I would guess it'd be similar in this case. It would be up to the 1,000.
And I would say, Councillor, that if for some reason it was 800, we would just, since we're splitting the difference, we would split the difference eventually and not be paid out.
Although you mentioned 500 first, so maybe.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. So item 15, action required. So on page 102 of your package, there is a letter from Celtic Colours Board Chair, Bob McCackern. And so that is a letter of request. Did we give it the budget?
We did 2,500.
Yeah.
Okay, so so there is a letter requesting support. This letter arrived June 12th, but we passed our budget a few days after that. And so in that budget, we approved $2,500 for Celtic Colours. So don't know if council has any other items they want to motion on, make movement on here. I think.
Having passed that as kind of a strategic investment rate at budget time, when do they get notified? Will they be notified right away? Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Yep. No, I think that will satisfy kind of the action required on this then, I think. Yep.
I think there's no action required on our part since the budget documents will.
Just a motion to receive will be fine because the action's already done.
Great, so I would entertain a motion to receive this letter. Moved by Councillor Mumbercat. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sampson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. The next one is pages 103 to 105, so the next page. This one is related to a sponsorship request from the Acadian Festival. So there's a letter there that explains, and it includes an invitation to participate in the Grand Parade on the 10th of August. And there are levels of sponsorship provided. So I'll throw this in. Just a reminder that at our last meeting, the minutes would show that we made a donation to the festival. Separate from this sponsorship.
So again, I know we've talked about this kind of off and on. I do feel like we need some better parameters for staff around sponsorship. I think during our budget deliberations, we talked about a line item in the budget that was advertising and promotions, and we were specifically renaming it that to accommodate this type of thing. So I'm not really sure why this would even land at our table if it's a staff-related budget item that we've already approved. But is it that the amount would be higher?
I would like direction on what level you'd like to go in.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a range from 250 to 1,000 here, and that is a finite budget item. So how much are you looking to put into this project?
And we've already invested. Yeah, 1,000. We've already invested the $1,000. Okay.
How much money is in that budget item? Do you remember?
7,500 is in the sponsorship one.
Through
And then
DCB?
I have the other advertising marketing one that is for administration and stuff we do with the media as well. But the specific sponsorship one is 7,500.
But that's through DCB, right?
No. This is our sponsorship.
It's our own.
DCB was a $7,250 to open up $26,000 in marketing and that in our area.
Festivals and events.
For festivals and
Yeah, it
events.
doesn't come to us. It goes
Yeah, that's right.
So we have 72?
7,500.
7,500. And so the matter here is that we have a budget line which speaks to that, but we haven't given specific parameters to staff around what level of sponsorship they would decide on our behalf. So Councillor Deputy Warden, do you have?
Yeah, I have some concern based on we already sponsored them in a grant form to the tune of $1,000 for the same weekend, basically. I know it's a separate ask, but it's more or less from the same event.
Yeah, and I thought that in our grant policy, we were asking organizations to advertise for us, to note that we've given them money. So this sponsorship would be some advertising for us as well, but that's in our grant policy, I thought.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to Councillor Marchand's point, there is always a pamphlet that goes out when it comes to the Acadian Festival, and the advertising is there in that pamphlet. So, yeah, for sure, our municipality will be acknowledged, and that would be advertised for sure, right? So, for me, yeah, I'm looking at these levels of sponsorship, and I know there's a separate ask there, but I mean, we're talking about the Acadian Festival here in Peterborough, and it's a big part of the French Acadian culture and heritage here on Almadam, right? So I'm not seeing too much of an appetite here to go with the 1,000 because there was already an ask, but I would like to see at least the Blue Star level of $500 for sure. That's where I would direct staff to go if you guys are in favor of that. Thank you.
Would you like to make the motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to at least provide the level Blue Star of $500 sponsorship, please. Thank you.
So, so we have a motion on the floor to, out of the $7,500 sponsorship budget, and to Councillor Mumbercat's point, we don't have parameters that say you can't apply for both. So perhaps we can look for a seconder and then have some additional discussion if we want. So is there somebody who would be prepared to second for the? Okay, so moved by Councillor Sampson, seconded by Councillor Marchand, that we provide level Blue Star $500 support sponsorship through the sponsorship budget. Any other discussion? Is your
My light's
It
been on
won't go
since I
off,
spoke
okay.
before, yeah. But, yeah, and I don't know if anyone wanted to go into their district funds, because I never stand in the way of that. I just think this gets a little dicey where we got almost the same ask
Yeah,
a
I
couple
don't-
of weeks ago. I know it was slightly different, but it was for
Yeah.
the same event, so.
Right, and I think that we don't have the option to go into district funds here. This would be coming out of a separate budget line that we don't have by district. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for $500 level Blue Star sponsorship support for the Acadian Festival. Any other discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Warden. So, yeah, I definitely share the Deputy Warden's concerns with that, and that, we need to maybe do some policy development around that. So if I could, I'd like to make a motion after this motion. Yes. But I just want to note that if we get 15 of these of $500, that eats up our $7,500.
Big asks that come already out of this one, right? That we discussed at budget time, like for conferences.
Right. I kind of wish we had a bit of a recommendation on this one, I guess, or an analysis of what we could do, because I would really like to support the motion. It's a huge festival. I'm super ashamed to say I have not attended, so I'm going to fix that this year, unless it's a sunny day and I'm in a boat. I really want to find a way to support this, but Okay, I'm waiting for the invite. So I really do want to like find a way to support that, but a couple questions I would have maybe to bounce back would be, number one is, will the grant that we sent, and you might know the answer to this, will the grant that we approved qualify us for that Gold Star level sponsorship already? So 500 would be, because it's 1,000 or more, right? So are they treating that differently, or are they treating it the same? I'd like to understand that, where it gets us because I do think it's appropriate for Richmond County to be featured as a supporter of this festival. It's a huge deal, right? So that's my first question. And then my second question would be a little bit around, like, just some information from staff on what do you expect coming up?
Coming out of that spot.
I know it's like asking you to have a crystal ball, but I do know that there's some things you are aware of. So what can we reasonably do? So,
Well, similarly, it was a couple of years ago, we had a conference that came up, the two-eyed scene.
right,
That was $5,000.
Right.
Or $10,000 that we kicked over to the strategic priorities.
exactly.
That came out of, because there was just no way to know that was coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can plot out which ones are coming, the ones we're aware of.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the 7,500 came from in the first place. It was to cover the ones we knew of and gave us about a $2,500 buffer.
Right. So Councillor Sampson, I'm wondering if we could consider an amendment to your motion, because your motion was to do the $500 level. But could we say contingent upon staff's analysis of, I don't know what I'm asking for the amendment to be frank, but like, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I do want to have an assessment, but I don't want to say no to it tonight and then can't come back. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. There's enough for this one.
So looking at this Blue Star breakdown of $500 to answer your question, there is some kind of 24-inch by 36-inch banner in the Ground Solid, yes. There's also
Talk of the pamphlet. So, yeah, so I'm sure that, yeah, there'd be some advertising in there.
Here's what I was thinking is maybe, I don't know, I guess it's an easy way to throw the responsibility on staff, but maybe staff could reach out to find out if, maybe through this other 1,000 we've already sent them, we are basically sponsoring them and that would be recognized. And if not, then, you've been given enough direction tonight to make a decision based on that, if there's no recognition from that first ask. Because, you know what I mean? Because that may have been just for a specific event during the festival, I think, but
Oh, sorry.
considering it's a sizable donation, that might almost be an automatic that, oh no, they go in the booklet as well and so on, because they've supported this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to be clear, when we gave them $1,000 last week, that was for children's parade, barbecue, and outdoor activities. So we were helping to support those things to happen. This is separate. This is about sponsorship, which allows them to fund the greater sort of overall festival. So there are two separate pots of money, and they have applied to both, and we don't have any rules that say they can't.
Right. Exactly.
So I am very comfortable, given that this is a cornerstone of the tourism market on Alma Dam in Richmond County, recognizing that although for the $1,000 at the children's parade, barbecue, and outdoor activities, happy to have our banner behind there, or for them to say thank you to Richmond County in the program for helping to sponsor these events. This sponsorship would include something else, which is the list of sponsors that you get. Councillor Sampson.
At the end of the day, I am prepared to support it. Like, this is a big deal, this festival.
Sure.
I'm prepared to support it, but I would like staff to maybe follow up with some questions with the group to find out, will it mean that we're being recognized at the 1,500 level or just a 500 level? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Looking at this level Gold Star and the level Blue Star, there's a couple of more additions, but not that many, but I'm sure that, there is going to be recognition there, right? So.
Right, and we need to keep in mind that it is the 24th of June, and these would go to the publisher probably in the middle of July. So there isn't time for turnaround and come back to council, for sure. So happy to sort of stipulate through the motion or not that, staff do their best to get us as much as we can get for the sponsorship money, whatever we should decide on that matter, and the $1,000 we already committed through the grant fund. But it certainly informs, to your point about making another motion immediately after this, certainly informs the need to provide some direction to staff around sponsorship. Okay. So there's a motion on the floor, which is to provide $500 through the sponsorship fund to get us to the blue level. I'm hearing that doesn't need to be in the, it can be if you want. Oh, did you make an amendment? No.
I'm not making a formal amendment, but like the motion was, I think, to support at $500 to the blue level. But can we just have the understanding?
Right.
We don't need to make an amendment to the motion. I don't think.
Get
It's
us
just
the best deal.
get us the best deal you can get, and good luck to the organizers. So.
Yeah. And, you know, Councillor Sampson, it may be worth kind of somehow, if we can drop it in conversation, that the sponsorship policy may be in place next year before this comes around again, so that there could be a totally different answer next year, okay? So there is a motion on the floor. Do we have any amendments anybody wants to make? Are we happy with that one, or any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, which is to take $500 from the sponsorship fund for this organization, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. So 16B, the Riverdale Community Services Society. Just getting my phone here to get the information. So at our meeting that was held last week, where we did our best to get through all the grants, there were some questions that we had about the Tier 2 community grant request that came from the Riverdale Community Services Society. And so we tasked Councillor Marchand with going to get some information. He did, and there is no change to most of what you see in your package, which starts on page 136. So their financial statements and all of that is still the same. They have made a change, having shopped around a little bit. So the total that they're requesting now is $4,671.72, and that comes from 2 items, each of which is a little cheaper than the last time they submitted. So instead of $6,400 and change, they are now looking at a lawnmower that would cost $4,102.86. And instead of a bush and trimmer at $752, they found a whippersnipper that will suffice at $568. So the rest of the information in the package is the same, but their ask totals $4,671.72, and that is the total capital cost. So that's their request. So I'll throw it out to Councillor Marchand, since you would have had some conversations here.
Thank you, Warden. Yeah, I spoke with Danielle, and I'm prepared to make a motion that we take $1,400 out of the general fund and $1,000 out of the District 3 funds to support this at roughly just a little over 50%.
Okay. So the motion on the floor from the District 3 councillor is to take $1,000 from District 3, $1,400 from the regional funds. Have a seconder on that, even if it's for discussion. I'll second it. Seconded by Councillor Arichat. Any discussion on that? Okay. Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Nay. Okay, great. So, yes. Oh, please. We forgot that, didn't we?
Almost forgot. I got distracted. I tried to get to Riverdale early so I could get to the motion, then I missed it. But I would like to make a motion at this point, given our grant discussions this evening, to refer the sponsorship matter or procedure back to staff back to staff for review, and then further on to bylaw and policy for discussion, because I think it would be good to have some staff information come to bylaw and policy, so that we have something to discuss. So we have a motion for to direct staff to bring some information about a potential sponsorship policy to the bylaw and policy committee. Do you have a seconder?
Yes. So seconded by Councillor Sampson. Sorry, beat you to it. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Warden, and I apologize. I know we passed the review of action items, but while we're waiting for the phone to ring, I just thought I would ask, through you over to our CAO about the letter that we had received from Rose Merrick some time ago, the chair of the River Bourgeois Community Services Society, regarding putting some funding in a yearly budget for the power and the base lights at the River Bourgeois Lighthouse. We had referred that back to staff for further investigation. It still shows up as in progress, and I'm just wondering if, I know we didn't have anything specific in our budget about it. Our budget was pretty tight, and we were trying to make sure it was no increase on the rate. It is number 505. I was just 505? Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's nothing to report at this point, I'm wondering if we could maybe have some kind of follow-up conversation to make sure we close the loop with them. I just don't want to leave it hanging.
Especially before the summer.
Yeah, yeah. Not really update at this point?
Yeah.
Maybe you and I can connect on it.
100%.
Okay, that's okay. You mean to-
I'll take that one away, 505?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Now that the budget's been approved, are you glad that you were able to deal with some of the grant requests and funding requests, sponsorship requests that were deferred or that you received around budget time but couldn't really deal with? Now are you glad to be able to deal with and get some of these off your plate?
Oh, not just some, like to the really all of them. It was a real priority for us. We had meetings scheduled that were going to last hours and hours if that's what we needed to do. We recognize that summer is a really important time for residents and they want to be able to get out and be involved in activities. And construction season is in the summer. So, there are just a lot of things that can't happen once hurricane season and then the winter months come along. So I believe we still have one or two that are kind of floating around out there that are just a little bit short of being complete. We will do our best to deal with those in a really timely way, but we recognize how important it is to support the volunteers, almost always volunteers who are doing this important work. But even more so this year, because what we used to see, say 2-3 years ago, you could have a quote from anybody and it would probably be fine to come back with that quote 6 months later. Now, with the way things are going, we recognize that quotes that community groups get may not be honored in like a really short window. So we really don't want to be in the way of any of that.
Now, you mentioned something about the grand opening. I believe you're talking about the playground up here. What's the date of that?
I don't know that they've picked a day. I believe that they had a day in June, but they actually wrote to us and said the date is still to be determined. Okay. So I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, we're really happy to support that. It's a really significant project on this side of the island. And I think it's just super that it kind of marries up to the same kind of time frame for the splash pad in St. Peter's. So if you're a family with young children in one end of the county or others, you can make a day trip to the other county. And so really nice to be able to, not just for folks who are visiting the area and not just to sort of day-to-day stuff, but for people who are taking staycations. It's a really nice way to be able to get your family outside and to go someplace local, maybe hit one of the restaurants, get yourself an ice cream at any of those communities. And it's just a great thing to see those two things pop up around the same time.
Joining me are two graduating officer cadets from the Canadian Coast Guard College in Sydney. Welcome, Callum McLean and Mateo TM. So first off, Mateo, I'll get you to answer this. How did you learn about the program and why did you decide to enroll in it?
I learned about the program through my dad. He was in the maritime industry for a very long time as a chief engineer. And after a while, he decided that he wanted to be closer to family. And he found the Coast Guard College and became an instructor. So yeah, he talked to me about it. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do for a while. And he talked about the opportunities that came along. And yeah, it piqued my interest. I wasn't sure at first, but being here proved that it was the career that I wanted. So yeah.
And you, Callum, how did you come to enroll in this program?
Well, you would think coming from Sydney, I would have known more about the college actually, but I wasn't too aware of it growing up. It wasn't until I started talking with a close family friend who's in the organization. It works as a chief engineer, that I kind of piqued my interest with it. So through talking with him, kind of the same thing as Mathieu, I didn't really know what I wanted to do in high school, and I didn't really just want to just go join some program, start spending money without having a pretty firm plan. So I decided to go to the college, given that it's paid for and everything. And after talking with that close family friend, he kind of laid out the benefits for me, and I realized it's a pretty nice program to get into. So I decided to test my luck and apply, and I got in. And after coming, same thing, I kind of realized, yeah, this is what I want to do.
So I understand you'll be celebrating your graduation at a ceremony on Saturday, June 7th. So now that you've completed the program, what are your thoughts on it? Mathieu, if you want to start off?
Yeah, well, after 4 years, we're pretty excited to graduate. It's a lot of hard work, lots of challenges, and lots of opportunities that came with it. So, yeah, we're just really excited to celebrate with our friends, our families, everyone who supported us throughout the 4 years. But with that also comes a little nerve because, like, our career really starts now with all the responsibilities that come with it. But I know that, again, we have so much support here that we'll make it through and it will be a smooth sail.
So who's coming to the graduation ceremony from your family and your
For my
group?
family, my dad will be coming, my mom, and my two sisters. Those are my close family.
So you must be pretty excited. You completed the program and get to celebrate. So I imagine you're looking forward to the weekend.
Yes, for sure. He's a little emotional, but everyone is very proud.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, eh? You're kind of sad to leave, but then excited at the same time for what's ahead. So yeah, it's kind of a different headspace, I suppose, eh?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So Callum, in your case too, what are your thoughts on the program now that you've been through it, you've completed it, and now looking back, what do you think?
Well, it was definitely a demanding program. There's no question about that. It's big time commitment, and it comes with its own set of challenges. But looking back on it, it's a small price to pay for what you come out of the college with. I'm excited to kind of start my career, so it kind of makes all the long nights studying and the big time commitments look pretty small in comparison. So looking back, it was definitely the right choice for me.
Now you just mentioned that. How long is the program, and how much work is involved when you take the program?
It's a 4-year program, and unlike other university programs, when it's 4 years, it actually means 4 years. You don't get a 4-month summer break in there. So when you sign up to college, you're actually an employee, which is great for some things because, of course, you get treated like an employee, you get your benefits, your health care, you get paid. But you're also expected to work like an employee. So you're no longer a student that takes their summer breaks and vacations and whatnot. You're an employee around the clock for 4 years. So it's pretty demanding in that sense, where you don't have a whole lot of free time. And if you're looking to get home quite often, it's challenging in that way. But of course, it's good in the sense that when you come out of it, you get your month on, month off, and you get plenty of time home and to do other activities, hobbies, and stuff like that.
So I assume, like Matteo, you're very excited about the graduation ceremony this weekend. Who's coming in from your group?
From my
I got a nice little crowd coming for sure. I got both my parents and my 3 siblings. So I got an older sister, younger sister, and a younger brother that are coming, and then my 2 grandparents as well.
So that sounds like a fun weekend ahead. And like we were saying earlier, it's kind of a mixed bag. You're happy to be finished, but sad you're going to be leaving some of your classmates and that, and kind of excited at the same time. I guess you share those feelings?
Of course, yeah. No, I think the most exciting part about it is getting to know, like, we've obviously spent 4 years together, everyone here, and you get pretty close with them, but you never actually really meet their families. So graduation's a time where everyone's family comes down, and you get to meet all their families and everyone important in their lives. So I think that's probably the coolest part for me, is kind of putting names to faces, or faces to names, sorry, and getting to meet everyone.
So now that you've completed it, Mario, I'll ask you first. Would you recommend it to others who are interested, or is this the type of program that's really only, for certain people can, handle that this type of program?
To be honest, I do definitely recommend it to everyone, especially when you're not sure on what you want to do, because it is such a vast and I'm looking for the words, but it's just so diverse. Like, yes, when you're doing the 4 years, you'll be mostly working towards being an officer, whether that's a navigation officer or an engineer officer. But afterwards, you have that month off where if you want to go and work on Earth, you can. Or if you want to try and do other things, yes, you can. Like you see on the boat, we're such a close family. You see all the jobs that we need to work as a team, such as the cooks, the ice specialist, the deckhands. Like if you notice that's what you want to do, or just a quartermaster, you can do that. So the college, it can give you that that base of leadership that you need, the teamwork that you need to have, and all the skills you need in order to work and have those basic life needs that not many people can get through another program, So, and also just the fact that it's paid for, and you have such a good support, you have food here, you have a place to live, you make your own family with the friendships and connections that you make. But yeah, so yes, I definitely do recommend it, even if it's not something you've thought that you would do.
Now, Callum, in your case, would you also recommend it to anyone, or would it be more a select number of people that, might not, not everyone might be able to handle it? How do you see that?
Well, the college or coming to the college really is like winning a lottery ticket. It can be very beneficial in the long run, and there's not many programs that I know of elsewhere that you get paid to go and it's free to go. So we actually get a monthly allowance, and we don't pay a penny to come here. We get our food paid for, our room and board. So there's not many programs in Canada, I'd say, that have that same benefits, especially where you're treated as an employee the entire time here. And it's pensionable time too. So if you look down the line, it really is a program that in the long term really is worth it. As soon as you come here, you start putting into your pension, you start getting paid, you aren't paying a cent, and you learn valuable skills like Mathieu mentioned. You learn leadership and camaraderie, and of course all your technical skills that you need to do the job as well. So it really is like winning a lottery ticket. Of course, you have to put in some work, and it can be demanding, so you need to be ready for that. But in the long run, if you can handle that, which it's definitely manageable with a good support system and the friends that you make here, it really is like winning a lottery ticket for sure.
So, Mario, what are your opinions of the Coast Guard College facility itself and where it's located?
Well, I'm pretty lucky. I live here, so I'm not far from home at all. I'm like 10 minutes away from here. But it can be pretty difficult if you're far away, if you're someone that's family oriented. But with that, like we mentioned before, the connections you make, the friendships you make, you kind of forget about that because like you make your own family because the experience is so unique that you can't make those connections elsewhere. It's like we've lived the same experience. We know what it's like, the hard work that comes with it, the ups and downs and everything. So that really makes us stronger and gives us that determination to like finish strong and keep going. And it can be difficult, but it's very, very, very much worth it, I believe. So.
Same question for you, Callum. What are your opinions of the Coast Guard College facility itself and where it's located? What do you think about it?
The facility itself really is world class, honestly. It's a very well upkept building. We have some amazing facilities. The gym, for example, is mind blowing when you get in there for how small of a college it actually is, student wise. The facilities that we have access to, saunas, gyms, a galley that stays open for us to go eat whenever. The facilities are very, very beneficial and very nice for us for sure. Yeah.
Now, the Canadian Coast Guard College offers a guaranteed job with the Canadian Coast Guard after graduation. Students also receive free tuition as well as room and board, as we just discussed. Now, graduates go on to work on Canadian Coast Guard ships and facilities to help keep mariners safe, protect the environment, conduct scientific research, and enable safe and efficient marine trade. Now that you've graduated, Mario, where will you be working?
Once I graduate, I'll be working in the central Quebec, Saint Laurent, and I'll be going on the ship des Groseilliers next week.
And what role will you be fulfilling there? What are you doing?
As of right now, I'll be going in as a third officer. So the boat will be in refit, which is when we prepare the boat to go up to the Arctic. So we'll be doing maintenance work, inspections, and making sure everything works well in order to do our job and serve our country up in the Arctic.
Now, Callum, same question for you. Where are you headed now after graduation? What will be your role when you get there?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to get my home region, which is where I wanted to go, in Dartmouth. So I'll be sailing out of there. As of right now, I'm a relief officer, so I kind of jump around where I'm needed to all kinds of different vessels, which is nice. You get experience on every different vessel, work with different people, see different operations. For me, right after graduation, I'm going to a small fleet vessel, so a smaller vessel we call the midshores. So it's a little different than most people. I think I'm the only one that's going to midshore right after grad in Dartmouth anyways. Yeah, those vessels do some different operations: search and rescue, conservation and protection, and so I'll be on that as second officer starting out. So I'll be responsible for some safety checks and chart corrections, and then from there, yeah, I'll be bouncing around to a few different vessels around the region.
Now, do you foresee that you're going to change that role? But I guess you'd have to wait and see whether you like it or not. Is there any ability to maybe go into something else, or what kind of flexibility is there?
There's a nice bit of flexibility. Of course, the longer you stay in, the more flexibility that you get. As a fresh grad, usually you are a relief mate or a relief engineer, so they kind of put you where you're needed to start off in supernumerary roles or as third engineer, third officer. And yeah, you kind of just go where you're needed to start off. But they are pretty flexible with time off requirements and needs. Like if you need a certain trip off, or you need to work right after grad, or if you need a few weeks off after grad or whatever, they're pretty flexible with that. And same thing with regions. Like we go through a ranking process here at the college to see what region you get, based on how you do academically and over your C phases over the last 4 years. And not everyone is happy with it, although most people were this year, and it seems to be the case most years that almost everyone gets the region of choice. But if you don't, they are pretty flexible with that. It usually only takes 6 months, maybe a year, and they'll transfer you around to where you wish. So it's nice in that regard.
And Matteo, same question for you. Do you foresee that you're going to be staying in that role, or do you think maybe you'd like to explore other options within the Coast Guard?
I for sure would like to keep my doors open, whether I stay third officer or I go down to being a junior. I really don't mind. I'm just starting out, so I don't even know what I like just yet. I just want the experience, and if I have to be sent a bit everywhere, I would not mind. I just want to keep my doors open and see what I like, and eventually, if I really like something, I can request that, and they'll make ends meet to make sure that I stay in like a specific position or a specific fleet.
Well, best of luck to you guys in your future endeavors. Congratulations on your graduations, and hope you have a good time this weekend. And thank you very much for sitting down with me, answering my questions, and speaking with our viewers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.